Today we're going to dive a little deeper into the command access locking hardware power supplies. Let's jump in.
So a great place to start with is our power supply matrix. I'm constantly referring to this when finding the proper power supply to power an opening. And we can see here we have all of our linear hardware locking power supplies. First thing to note, these are all 24 volt DC power supplies. If you need to set up any output for 12 volts, check out our VC2412. And to start off, I'm going to pick one of my favorites, our PS220. And we can go through now each column and I'll dive into and explain a little more. So first off, we're going to see the amperage. We have two columns for amperage, we have continuous, and we have our boost. So for the 220, we have 2 for 2 amps, and then 2 for 2 inputs, 2 outputs. We see here the second column of amperage is for our boost amperage. So for 20% of the time, the PS220 can throw an extra amp, so it goes from 2 amps to 3 amps, and that's to handle the inrush for any of our latch retraction devices, whether they be motor or solenoid. We can see here on the battery backup that the 220 does not have it, but the 220B will have battery backup. So any of our power supplies with the B on the end will have battery backup supplied. The 220 has your fire alarm link, and it has a unique feature that's only available on the 220 series, which is our 24 volt power tap, which is constant power to power any accessories without needing to get another power source. Next, we'll dive into all the different types of locking hardware and how many we recommend powering off of each of our power supplies. So we can see here for the 220, since it is a 2 input, 2 output, that we can pretty much fire off any 2 devices out there, whether they be small mortise, cylindrical, or exit trim solenoids or motors, any larger motors for latch retraction, and any solenoid driven latch retraction devices, as well as high inrush solenoids like our PM300 for our LPMs, or your Von Duprin, with the 16 amp inrush. We can see that the non-battery backup version is going to come in the small enclosure, and all of our battery backup versions are going to come in the large enclosure. And we can see the measurements for the small and large enclosures down here at the bottom. So going down the rest of the list, we can see on the 210, we round up to 1.5 amp with another additional amp boost. It's a 1 input, 1 output, but on the 210 you can see that we have 2 devices that can be fired off here. That is because you can actually double up on the output to fire 2 exit devices or locks simultaneously for double door scenarios. One other note is this the 202 and 204 series, which is a newer power supply for us. These you can see are not recommended to fire any larger solenoid driven latch retraction devices. These were specifically designed for smaller solenoids or your motorized latch retraction devices. Great power supplies, but built a little leaner without the high inrush capabilities. And lastly, just to review all of our power supplies, these are linear power supplies. One thing I like to review is the difference between linear and switching. And all of our linear power supplies are built to do the heavy lifting and for the high inrush of latch retraction. Here's a quick little diagram showing the difference. So linear, you're going to have that constant voltage at the time of inrush, whereas a switching power supply, which are very common out there and great for smaller solenoids, CCTV, cameras, anything like that, at the time of inrush, you're going to see this dip and then a bounce back up. So you're not going to have as consistent a voltage because the linear does not have a store of power, the switching does not have a store of power on board, while the linear is going to have that power available. So for performance on any latch retraction device, especially on the busy doors, we always recommend a linear power supply so you don't have any issues with performance in the long run. And this power supply matrix is available on any of our power supply cut sheets, as well as the catalog. On all the cut sheets, it's on the second page. And again, it's a great resource when you're trying to find the best power supply for your opening. Here we have the PS220B. Here's where you hook up your incoming 120, line, neutral, and ground. Here's the output from the main board powering our 2-door relay board with power tap. Each one has dry contact input and output, and the power tap has constant power. The LEDs show us which outputs are on. You have your fire alarm link, battery backup, and your trim pot for voltage adjustment. Once powered up, you'll see that the red LED lights up. That's going to go on your cover as an easy visual to show that 120 is coming into the power supply.